If you were to ask me who the coolest person in ancient history was, Alexander the Great has to be near the top. I mean, this guy literally became king at 20 years old, conquered one of the biggest empires on earth, marched his army from Greece to Egypt to as far as India, and did it all before dying at just 32. This is actually insane. He was born in 356 BCE and became king of Macedonia in 336 BCE after the assassination of his father Philip II. And what makes Alexander so interesting isn't just that he won battles, it's the way he lived. He didn't sit in the safety back like in some tent, giving orders. He led from the front. He fought with his men. He took crazy risks. He moved fast, thought big, and had a huge belief that he was meant to do something legendary. That confidence inspired loyalty too. According to the BBC, his army followed him through constant fighting for years and only refused him once. Alexander grew up in Macedonia, and he wasn't raised like an ordinary prince. He was educated by Aristotle, one of the most famous philosophers in history. So right from the start, you've got this mix of warrior and thinker. He inherited a powerful but unstable kingdom, and instead of falling apart under the pressure, he moved immediately. He crushed enemies at home, reasserted control over Greece, and then turned towards the biggest target of all, the Persian Empire, the superpower of that time. And this is where the story actually gets wild. In 334 BCE, Alexander crossed into Asia and won the Battle of Granchius, which was his first major victory against the Persian forces. The battle mattered because it gave him momentum and the resources to keep pushing deeper into Persian territory. It was basically the moment where his huge ambition stopped being a dream and actually became real. Then came Issus in 333 BC, his first direct clash with the Persian king Darius III. Alexander won again, and that's one of the craziest parts of his history. He kept beating forces that were often larger than his own. He wasn't just brave, he was tactically brilliant. He used a balanced armory with cavalry, infantry, archers, and so much more that made his forces basically unstoppable. But Alexander wasn't only about open battlefields. He could also pull off brutal, difficult sieges. One of the best examples is Tyre in 332 BCE. Tyre was incredibly hard to capture, and Alexander spent 7 months taking it. Britannica describes the storming of Tyre as his greatest military event. That tells you a lot. This wasn't just a guy who charged with confidence. He could adapt, endure, and solve problems when brute force alone was not enough. After that, he moved into Egypt, where he was welcomed rather than resisted, and he founded Alexandria in 332 BCE, a city that would become one of the most important centers of learning and culture in the ancient world. That's another reason he stands out. He didn't just destroy things, he built things too. He founded cities, connected regions, and helped spread Greek language and culture across a huge area. Then came the battle that really locked in his legend, Gaugamela, I definitely didn't say that right, in 331 BCE. This was the final, decisive showdown with Darius III. Darius had chosen the ground carefully and gathered a massive force. On paper, Alexander should have been in serious trouble, but Alexander saw an opening, attacked decisively, and broke the Persian position. After that, he was effectively the master of the Persian Empire. The BBC calls it his greatest victory, and the World Encyclopedia describes it as the battle that made him king of all Asia. This is not a normal career achievement for a guy in his 20s. Over the next years, Alexander kept going east. The BBC says he led his army around 11,000 miles and founded more than 70 cities. He created an entire empire stretching across 3 continents, from Greece and Egypt all the way to the Indian Punjab. At his peak, his empire linked an enormous part of the ancient world through trade, culture, and political power. One of the things I like about Alexander's story is that it's not just a perfect superhero story. You can also see the cost of all his ambition. By the time he reached India, his men were exhausted. After the Battle of Hydaspes, he wanted to keep pushing further, but at the Hypasis River, his army finally stopped and refused to go on. Even Alexander the Great, the man who had beaten empires, couldn't defeat exhaustion and human limits. And then, unfortunately, almost as suddenly as he rose, it ended. In Babylon in 323 BCE, after falling ill, Alexander died at just age 32 years old. Britannica says he became sick after a prolonged banquet and died 10 days later on June 13th, 323 BCE. He had no clear successor, and after his death, the empire he built began to fracture. So why was Alexander so cool? Because he was more than just a conqueror. He was fearless, smart, ambitious, reckless, charismatic, and unbelievably driven. He changed the ancient world in a little more than a decade. He led from the front, took huge risks, won battle after battle, founded cities, spread culture, and created a legend so big that people are still talking about it to this day. I mean, look at me. I've just spent an hour writing a script, and I'm making a YouTube video on him, so he must have done something pretty cool. So whether you admire him, question him, or both, one thing is hard to deny. Alexander didn't just live in history, he charged straight through it. Jesus loves you. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.